Hi, this is Nasreen, and today I'll be reviewing the great hack and the story behind it. The agenda for today includes introduction, what is the ethical issue, why it's important, pros and cons, intended and unintended consequences, future aspects, and recommended actions. So the documentary focuses on Professor David Carroll, Brittany Kaiser, who is a former business development director for Cambridge Analytica, and the British investigative journalist Carol Cadwalder, and their stories expose the work of Cambridge Analytica in the politics of various countries, including the United Kingdom's Brexit campaign and the 2016 United States elections, in addition to similar cases in Africa and Asian countries. For those of you who are not familiar with this company, it was a British political consulting firm that was involved in influencing hundreds of elections globally, and that came to prominence through the Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal. And the parent company for Cambridge Analytica was SCL Group, which stands for Strategic Communication Laboratories, which is classified as a DM organization. If we take a couple of steps back from 10-15 years, the majority of people are or were happy with the idea of connecting with family, friends, assuming that it is a free connectivity, looking from a subscription perspective. But actually, using it for many more purposes made it more valuable, as billions, if not trillions, of data reside there, and that can create value for many organizations. Professor Carroll listed an interesting term where he stated that people use social media as a guardian of memories to store images, dates, milestones, achievements, etc. In addition to using it for as a matchmaker, friends finder, instant fact checker, as a source for news or information, personal entertainer, and even as a therapist in some cases. And that made people the commodity and the prey for the greedy analytics companies that do not consider the ethical aspect beforehand. There is a price for everything. The three main ethical problems discussed: first is the right of the people to know which pieces of their data was taken and used and how it was used without their consent, in addition to being able to recall or retrieve or reclaim the parts taken, and finally, fighting the unethical act of manipulating the crowd. So Cambridge Analytica had access to 5,000 data points for each American voter, as they say, and overall the data for 87 million Facebook accounts. Most of these points were collected from the user indirectly through other embedded applications like tests and quizzes. And that case is important because everyone on the social media platform is targeted in some way or another. So we're all targeted. And it's not only about Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica closed their operations in 2018, so it's not there anymore. But there will always be a similar Cambridge Analytica somewhere. And if there is no solution to avoid what happened since 2015, it will happen over and over again. And most probably a similar act is taking place right now, but they were not caught yet. And in some capacity, the segment of people who are undecided may be controlled in an unethical way to direct them toward a certain action, and then they will have a power to manipulate the overall view. And on the large scale, that implies not having any fair selections, or maybe if we're going through elections and people will be thinking it is their decision while it's not. So according to Kaiser and Chris Wiley, who was a former data scientist at Cambridge Analytica, they confirmed that the company was able to predict the personality of people, and that enabled them to determine the behavior of the people or the users, which impact their decisions. So they had the know-how of predicting personality with high precision, and they used that to drive behavior and influence the decision that people take to direct them toward a certain decision. So it was more merging data mining and psychology to drive actions and making people think that they take their own decisions. That was done through adding fake content or specifically selected content based on the personality of the targeted user, knowing that this content will make them act in a certain direction. And that could have been different if they didn't watch or read the information added intentionally in front of them, which is definitely an unacceptable and unethical act. Looking at the pros and cons, if we break the problem into two halves, the first impression that I got is that there is sort of similarities between the way that the algorithm that they developed and the same thing for the dynamite invention. So the invention of dynamite by Alfred Nobel and how the people use it, it has useful applications such as mining, construction, and demolition industries. And the same thing if we apply this on the algorithm developed by Cambridge Analytica, despite the fact that they used it in an unethical way. But if we look at the first half of the circle, many data scientists, they work hard to increase the precision and accuracy of their models, to classify users correctly, and to minimize the false positive and false negative. And this is an image from one of the Cambridge Analytica previous presentations that show the three main groups with, against, and undecided. And the undecided are the yellow points. And those yellow points were their target. They didn't definitely state it in a way at the end that sounded unethical, but by connecting the pieces, we see the whole picture now. And so the algorithm itself, the first part, is brilliant, despite how did they use it or how did they apply it. So Analytica was able to correctly classify with high precision the three main categories, despite of the question as it differs from one country to another and where it is applied. So finding the with, against, and undecided was the real value that helped them proceed and do the unethical part, which is manipulating the people's views toward something that they want to achieve or reach. But it would be unfair to blame companies like Analytica alone. There are other parties involved as well, including and not limited to social media platform companies, the government, ICO, and the equivalent agencies in different nations. For the Great Hack, it was ICO as Professor Carol sued Analytica, which is a British company. One of the scary sentences said by the former business development director Kaiser at CA, she said, "People just give it to them." So, and we do every day. As a matter of fact, I personally agree with that. Many people keep their statuses, their life, open for public images, opinions, the struggles that they go through, and then they put the blame on whoever who takes it. In Professor Carroll's case, it was slightly different because his data was protected and his settings was to share it with friends and friends of friends only, as far as I understood. And as of today, he doesn't know what are the 5,000 points collected about him and how they were collected. Even if we look at the small scale, in my circle of friends, I always wonder how some of my friends share very detailed information or images or videos inside their houses or family members and where they are at this moment, as that may help others to attack them and they put themselves in danger. And I mean a physical crime and not a data breach. According to Statistica.com, there are 3.6 billion users on social network, and that number will continue to grow. So there will be for sure companies that may try to repeat or replicate Analytica's experience, but with caution to avoid being caught. And also one of the tricks done by SCL, which is the parent company for Cambridge Analytica, they used to spread links for some of the fun quizzes similar to the ones that we do sometimes every day, like the like the ones that tell you which cartoon character are you, or which movie reflects your life, and stuff like that. And these types of tests or applications was not designed to entertain people, but it was more to get information about them. One of the intended consequences is manipulating the crowd to get results of interest. And in the end, Analytica was a political consultation firm, so they cared more about the results. And that is one of the reasons that led them to taking an unethical act of sharing fake news on a personalized level based on the personality of the targeted audience to drive their behavior. While the unintended consequences are sort of endless. It depends on how the undecided user perceive and act based upon the fact or media that they saw. So some people just express themselves through a vote, while others, especially the uneducated ones or the aggressive people, may take physical action and harm the lives of others. And I would quote here, garbage in, garbage out. Some of the future aspects that the different parties need to consider is treating data as a personal property and setting clear rights to avoid any violations. Also, I read an article on bitrate that suggested that blockchain may be a prospect solution for similar problems. Some of the recommendations that I suggest is that the social media platform companies need to rethink and redesign the way that the privacy agreement is shared with the public. The majority of the users, they don't read, either because they're lazy to read or they undermine the impact of the power of their data. So I put here in the picture on the right just a simple diagram to show what the idea that I was thinking about, that it could be the agreement may be divided into a set of colorful screens, and on each screen there is a couple of words and a visual diagram or image that will represent the same meaning behind the words written. And that also may be a good solution for elderly people. On the individual level, we need to be more cautious and do not assume that the social platform companies are taking their precautions. And we need to spread the awareness among our families and friends, and following the 6 degrees of separation. If everyone spread the word, then maybe the majority will raise awareness among a large population. Finally, the government or the non-profit agencies, they need to take actions to save the public from the dark side of social media. Finally, I wanted to shed the light on one of the pros for the personality prediction algorithm, which was the left half for the circle that we discussed earlier. I kept it until the end as it would be clear after seeing the whole presentation and the big picture. The algorithm developed by Cambridge Analytica may or could have been used to help solve global problems, but by spreading the true information this time. For example, if the same algorithm is used to raise awareness of the people about the plastic crisis that we're currently in, and that the amount of plastic in the ocean may exceed the fish in the ocean by 2050 if no action is taken, or for example, if it's used to reach the people to make them aware about the climate change or the hunger problems, then maybe in this case this can be used, or this algorithm can be used to make the world a better place for all. And that's it for today, and thank you for taking the time to watch the presentation. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comments below.